I always thought our life was a tapestry woven with trust. Clara and I had built something beautiful over 12 years. 2 kids, a cozy house in the suburbs, and a rhythm that felt unbreakable. I'm a structural engineer, so I notice patterns, the way things hold or falter under pressure. Clara, a graphic designer, brought color to my world, her laughter a counterpoint to my methodical nature. But patterns shift, don't they? It started with small things I didn't question. She'd linger at her studio late, claiming deadlines. Her phone, once an open book, grew guarded, always face down. I'd catch her smiling at it, a private glow in her eyes that wasn't for me. I told myself it was nothing, stress maybe, or a new client. But doubt is a quiet architect, laying bricks in the dark. One evening, I found her sketchbook open on the kitchen table, a drawing of a man's hand, not mine, traced with an intimacy that made my chest tighten. I didn't ask about it. I should have. Instead, I poured another glass of wine and let the silence grow. The kids, Emma and Noah, were oblivious, their chatter filling the gaps Clara and I no longer bridged. I started noticing her perfume lingered differently, sharper, like it was masking something, or someone. I'd lie awake, her breathing steady beside me, wondering when we'd stopped being us. It wasn't just her distance. It was the way she'd flinch when I touched her, a reflex she couldn't hide. I began cataloging these moments, building a case in my mind, though I wasn't ready to admit what it pointed to. Trust is a structure, and mine was cracking. The first real clue came by accident. I was picking up Clara's dry cleaning, something I did without thinking, a habit of love. Tucked in her coat pocket was a receipt from a hotel downtown, dated for a Wednesday afternoon when she'd said she was at a client meeting. The receipt listed 2 cocktails and a room charge. My hands shook as I stood in the cleaner's fluorescent glare, the world tilting. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed proof, something undeniable. I started paying attention, really paying attention. Her late nights grew frequent, her excuses polished but thin. I'd check her phone's location when she was working, and it would ping miles from her studio. I felt like a detective in my own marriage, hating myself for it but unable to stop. One night, she came home with a faint bruise on her neck, barely hidden by her scarf. She brushed it off as a stress rash, but I knew better. I started following her, discreetly, parking outside her studio. One evening, I saw her leave not alone, but with a man, tall, broad-shouldered, his hand grazing her back as they slipped into a cab. My heart pounded, a primal rhythm urging me to act, but I stayed frozen, watching the cab disappear. I didn't know his name yet, but I memorized his face, the way he moved with a confidence that mocked my existence. Clara's betrayal wasn't just a moment. It was a campaign, deliberate and cruel. His name was Ethan. I found it in her email, a careless oversight on her part. A message, brief but damning, about meeting at their spot. I hacked her account. Not proud of it, but desperation rewrites ethics. Ethan was a photographer, someone she'd met at a gallery event. Their emails were a map of stolen moments, each one a knife to my gut. They'd been meeting for months, weaving a secret life while I built bridges and raised our kids. I started tracking him, learning his routines. He lived in a loft downtown, all exposed brick and pretension. I saw them together once, outside a cafe, her hand in his, her laugh brighter than I'd heard in years. It wasn't just physical. It was emotional, a theft of her heart I hadn't seen coming. I stopped sleeping, my mind a loop of their moments versus ours. Clara noticed my distance but didn't ask why, maybe because she knew. I began collecting evidence, photos, receipts, screenshots, building a case not for her, but for me to justify what I'd do next. I didn't want to end our marriage. I wanted to end the lie. But how do you punish someone you still love? I'd catch myself staring at her across the dinner table, wondering how she could sit there, lying with every smile. The kids sensed the tension, their questions sharper, but I shielded them. This was my battle, not theirs. Revenge isn't born in a moment. It grows deliberate as a blueprint. I didn't want violence or confrontation. That's not who I am. I wanted something lasting, a wound they'd both carry. I started with Ethan. His career was his pride, his photography lauded in local circles. I found his portfolio online, noticed he'd been submitting to a prestigious gallery show. Anonymously, I sent the curator doctored images, his work but altered to look plagiarized. It was subtle, believable, and devastating. The gallery blacklisted him, and I watched his social media spiral into rants about unfairness. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. For Clara, I needed something deeper. She valued her reputation, her creativity, her place in our community. I began planting seeds, small, anonymous tips to her clients about missed deadlines, shoddy work. Her studio's reviews tanked, her confidence visibly fraying. At home, I played the dutiful husband, cooking dinners, helping with homework, letting her think I was clueless. But I was dismantling her world, brick by brick. I hacked her social media, posting subtle, cryptic messages that hinted at guilt, enough to make her friends whisper. She grew paranoid, checking her phone obsessively, unaware I was the ghost in her machine. I felt no joy, only a cold satisfaction. This wasn't about winning her back. It was about making her feel the weight of her choices. Clara started to crack. She'd snap at the kids, her patience thin, her eyes darting like she was waiting for a blow. Ethan's career implosion made him cling to her harder, their meetings more desperate, but I was always watching. I installed a tracker on her car, saw them at seedy motels, their affair reduced to something cheap. I sent Ethan an anonymous package, printouts of their emails, photos of them together, with a note, "She's not yours." He stopped calling her, paranoid, and Clara's texts to him went unanswered. She'd cry in the bathroom, thinking I couldn't hear. I didn't confront her. I let her drown in her own guilt. Her studio lost its biggest client, a domino I'd nudged with a well-timed email. Our friends started pulling away, sensing the rot in her perfect facade. I kept my routine, kissing her goodbye each morning, my heart a furnace of calculated rage. The kids asked why mommy was sad, and I lied, protecting them while I tore their mother's world apart. I wasn't done. The final act was coming, something that would leave them both exposed, raw, unable to hide. I didn't know if I'd feel whole again, but I'd make sure they never forgot the cost of breaking me. Clara's unraveling became a public spectacle, though she didn't know I was the architect. Her once vibrant social media, filled with art and inspiration, grew sparse, her posts tinged with a desperation to seem normal. I'd seeded enough doubt in her circle that her friends' invitations dwindled. At a neighborhood barbecue, I overheard whispers about her strange behavior, and I played the concerned husband, nodding sadly, letting their assumptions fester. Ethan, meanwhile, was a ghost. After the gallery fiasco, his reputation was in tatters, and my anonymous package had driven a wedge between him and Clara. I tracked his movements online, saw him spiral into late-night posts about betrayal, never naming her but clearly wounded. I felt a grim satisfaction, but it was fleeting. Clara's pain was harder to watch. She'd sit at the kitchen table, staring at her laptop, her fingers hovering over keys she didn't press. Her studio was hemorrhaging clients, and I'd made sure her latest pitch, a big contract, never reached its recipient, intercepted through a hacked email. At home, she was a shadow, her laughter gone, her eyes hollow. The kids noticed, clinging to me more, their innocent questions about mommy's sadness like needles in my chest. I kept up the act, cooking their favorite meals, reading bedtime stories, while Clara withdrew further. I wanted her to feel the isolation she'd imposed on me, but seeing it unfold was a bitter victory. I'd catch her looking at me, searching for suspicion, but I gave her nothing, just a smile that hid my rage. My plan was working, but it was hollowing me out too. I wondered if I was punishing her or myself. I escalated my campaign, driven by a need to see it through. For Ethan, I targeted his finances. Using a burner account, I posed as a client, commissioning a pricey photo shoot, then disputed the charges after he'd spent money on equipment. His bank account took a hit, and his frustration spilled online, alienating what was left of his network. Clara, unaware of my hand in his downfall, tried reaching out to him, her texts increasingly frantic. I intercepted those too, deleting them before they sent, leaving her to think he'd abandoned her. Her paranoia grew, her phone now a constant companion, checked obsessively for replies that never came. At home, I planted subtle traps, leaving my laptop open to a hotel booking site, watching her squirm, wondering if I knew. I didn't confront her. Silence was my weapon. I started rumors through a fake email, suggesting her studio was a front for shady dealings. Her last loyal client dropped her, citing trust issues. Clara's confidence, once her armor, was gone. She'd ramble about sabotage, her voice trembling, and I'd nod, feigning concern, while my mind churned with the next step. The kids were my anchor, their innocence a reminder of why I couldn't stop. Emma asked if Mommy was sick, and I hugged her, promising everything would be okay. But I wasn't sure. My revenge was precise, but it was eroding the life I'd built. I didn't want Clara back. I wanted her to understand the depth of her betrayal. The next phase was exposure, but not the kind that could be denied. I'd gathered enough photos, emails, receipts to build a damning narrative. I created an anonymous blog, styled like a local gossip site, and posted a carefully worded story. A prominent designer and a disgraced photographer caught in a scandal, with blurred images that hinted at Clara and Ethan without naming them. The post spread like wildfire, shared by neighbors and colleagues. Clara's phone buzzed with notifications, her face paling as she read the comments speculating about her. She tried to laugh it off, claiming it was a mistake, but the damage was done. Her remaining clients distanced themselves, and her studio's inbox filled with cancellations. Ethan, too, felt the sting. His few supporters dropped away, his name now tied to scandal. I watched Clara at a PDA meeting, her smile forced as mothers whispered behind her. She left early, claiming a headache, and I followed, keeping my distance. At home, she locked herself in the bathroom, her muffled sobs audible through the door. I didn't comfort her. Instead, I sent an anonymous tip to a local art blog, exposing her unprofessional conduct with doctored invoices. The blog ran the story, and her reputation as an artist, her core identity, began to collapse. I felt no triumph, only a cold resolve. The kids were at a sleepover, sparing them the tension, but I knew this couldn't last. My revenge was a machine, and I was its operator, unable to stop. Clara hit her limit. She confronted me one night, her eyes wild, accusing me of knowing something. "Are you doing this?" she screamed, waving her phone, the blog post glaring from the screen. I played dumb, my voice calm, asking what she meant. Her frustration boiled over, tears streaming as she rambled about sabotage, about Ethan ghosting her, about her life falling apart. I listened, my face a mask, while inside I catalogued her pain. She didn't confess, not fully, but her guilt was a shadow in every word. I suggested she take a break, maybe see a therapist, knowing it would sting. She stormed out, grabbing her keys, and I let her go, tracking her car to a motel where she sat in the parking lot, alone. Ethan wasn't there. He'd moved on, or so I'd ensured by feeding him lies about Clara's intentions. I spent that night planning the final act, something that would strip them both bare. I hacked into Clara's cloud, downloading her private sketches, intimate drawings of Ethan, her heart laid bare. I prepared to leak them, not to the public, but to her closest confidants, letting her betrayal speak for itself. The kids were with my sister, a temporary shield from the storm. I looked at our wedding photo on the mantel, Clara's smile a memory of a woman I didn't know. My revenge was nearly complete, but it felt like I was dismantling my own foundation. I executed the last blow with surgical precision. I sent Clara's sketches to her best friend, Lena, from an anonymous account, with a note, "She's not who you think." Lena, loyal but nosy, shared them with their art group, and the fallout was swift. Clara's phone lit up with messages. Shock, betrayal, disgust. She came home that night, her face ashen, and collapsed on the couch, not speaking. I asked if she was okay, my voice neutral, and she just stared, as if seeing me for the first time. Ethan, meanwhile, received a package. Prints of the same sketches, with a note implying Clara had leaked them to ruin him. He called her, furious, and I listened through her phone's mic, a hack I'd set up weeks ago. Their argument was brutal, each blaming the other, their affair imploding under the weight of my design. Clara's studio officially closed the next day, her dream reduced to a for-lease sign. Our community shunned her, the gossip too thick to navigate. I kept my routine, kissing the kids goodnight, while Clara withdrew into silence. The house felt like a mausoleum, our marriage a relic. I'd won, but the cost was a hollowed-out life. I didn't know what came next, divorce maybe or a new start, but I'd made them pay. Clara's eyes, once full of color, were empty, and Ethan was a pariah. My revenge was complete, but I was left standing in the rubble of my own making. The dust of my revenge settled, but the air in our home remained heavy, suffocating. Clara barely spoke, her presence a ghost haunting the edges of our lives. She'd stopped going to her studio, there was nothing left to salvage, and spent her days in the guest room, staring at the ceiling or scrolling through her phone, which now held only silence from her former friends. The kids, Emma and Noah, sensed the fracture but couldn't name it. They'd ask why Mommy didn't smile anymore, and I'd deflect with promises of better days, my heart twisting at their innocence. I kept up the facade of normalcy, driving them to school, attending their soccer games, while Clara drifted further into her private despair. I'd catch her watching me sometimes, her eyes searching for the truth. Did I know? Had I orchestrated her downfall? I gave her nothing, my face a blank slate, my voice steady, but inside I was unraveling too. The thrill of revenge had faded, leaving a void where our marriage once stood. I'd check Ethan's online presence obsessively, a habit I couldn't break. He'd left town, his social media dormant, his name a footnote in the art world's gossip. I'd broken them both, but the victory was ash in my mouth. At night, I'd lie awake, the house creaking, wondering if I'd gone too far. Clara's betrayal had gutted me, but my response had gutted us all. The kids were the only reason I didn't walk away. I needed to protect them, to shield them from the wreckage I'd helped create. But how do you rebuild when the foundation is gone? Came unexpectedly, like a crack in a dam. One night, after the kids were asleep, Clara sat me down at the kitchen table, her hands trembling, her eyes red from crying. "I need to tell you something," she whispered, her voice raw. I braced myself, knowing what was coming but dreading it all the same. She confessed everything. Her affair with Ethan, the months of lies, the stolen moments that had felt like freedom until they became her cage. She didn't justify it, didn't blame me, just laid her guilt bare, her words tumbling out like a flood. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed, reaching for my hand. I pulled away, my silence sharper than any accusation. I didn't tell her I'd known, didn't reveal the machinery of my revenge. I just listened, letting her words carve deeper into the wound she'd already made. When she finished, she looked at me, desperate for forgiveness, but I had none to give. "Why now?" I asked, my voice cold. She didn't have an answer, only more tears. I stood and left her there, retreating to my office, where I sat in the dark, replaying her confession. It wasn't cathartic. It was confirmation of everything I'd feared. I'd destroyed her world, but hearing her admit it didn't heal me. It just made the betrayal real, undeniable. The kids slept down the hall, oblivious, and I envied their ignorance. Clara's confession was a step toward truth, but it was also a reminder that we were strangers now, bound only by shared history and shared pain. The days after Clara's confession were a tense stalemate. We didn't discuss it again, but it hung between us, a specter neither could ignore. She tried to re-engage, cooking breakfast, asking about my day, but her efforts felt hollow, like she was playing a role she no longer believed in. I responded with minimal words, keeping her at arm's length. The kids were our only bridge, their needs forcing us to coexist. I'd catch Clara watching them, her eyes soft with regret, and I wondered if she was mourning the mother she'd failed to be. I didn't trust her remorse, not yet. My revenge had been meticulous, but it hadn't prepared me for this, for her attempt to claw her way back. I started seeing a therapist in secret, needing a space to untangle my rage and guilt. I didn't tell her about the blog, the hacked emails, the doctored images. That truth was mine to carry, a weight I wasn't ready to share. Clara, meanwhile, began rebuilding, taking freelance work from home, small projects that kept her busy but didn't restore her reputation. Our community hadn't forgotten. The whispers followed her, a shadow she couldn't shake. I stopped tracking Ethan, letting him fade into irrelevance. My focus was here, in this fractured home, where every interaction was a test. Could we coexist for the kids? Could I ever look at her without seeing betrayal? The therapist asked what I wanted, and I didn't know. Forgiveness felt impossible, but so did letting go. For now, we lived in this fragile truce, a house divided by silence. Clara's efforts to rebuild grew more earnest, but they only sharpened my resentment. She'd leave notes on the fridge, small apologies, promises to be better, and I'd crumple them unseen. One evening, she asked if we could really talk about us. I agreed, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to know if I could face her without breaking. We sat in the living room, the kids at a friend's house, the quiet amplifying our tension. She spoke of her shame, her regret, how Ethan had been an escape from pressures she couldn't name. I listened, my jaw tight, until she asked, "Did you know?" "Before I told you." The question hung like a blade. I could have lied, kept my revenge buried, but something snapped. "I knew," I said, my voice low. "I knew everything." Her eyes widened as I laid it out. The receipts, the emails, the photos, the nights I'd followed her. I didn't mention the sabotage, but I let her see my pain, raw and unfiltered. "You broke us," I said, and she flinched, tears spilling. She didn't ask how I'd known so much, didn't suspect the depths of my retaliation. Instead, she whispered, "I deserve this." Her admission should have felt like vindication, but it didn't. It was just another crack in our foundation. I left her there, retreating to the garage, where I sat among my tools, the irony not lost on me. A man who built bridges, unable to repair his own home. The truth was out, but it hadn't set us free. It had only shown me how far we'd fallen. The weeks that followed were a slow reckoning. Clara and I didn't reconcile, but we didn't unravel further either. We agreed to therapy not for us but for the kids who deserved parents who could function. In sessions, we navigated the wreckage, her guilt clashing with my anger, the therapist a referee in our quiet war. I still hadn't confessed my revenge, and I wasn't sure I ever would. It was my secret, a shadow I carried to protect what little remained of our family. Clara took steps to rebuild her life, enrolling in an online course, seeking redemption through work. I watched, detached, unsure if her efforts were for her or for me. The kids thrived, their resilience a balm for my wounds. Emma's drawings filled the fridge, Noah's laughter echoed in the yard, and I clung to them, my reason to keep going. Our community's gossip faded, replaced by newer scandals, but Clara's reputation remained scarred, a consequence she'd live with. I stopped checking her phone, stopped tracking her movements, letting go of the detective I'd become. Ethan was gone, a footnote in our story, his absence a small mercy. I didn't know if I'd ever forgive Clara, but I began to see her as human again, flawed and broken like me. The house felt less like a battlefield, more like a place we might learn to inhabit. My revenge had been cruel, precise, but it hadn't healed me. Healing, I realized, would come from something else. Time, maybe, or the stubborn love I still had for my kids. For now, we moved forward, one fragile step at a time.